Last week on Twitch and YouTube, I played multiplayer with these wonderful people. For the first time ever, we had some great fights. My goodness, we had some great fights. There was some political persuasion and intrigue going on in the secret whispering chat. Oh, and did I mention we had some good fights? We had a lot of fun. In the chat, on stream, I was streaming it on Twitch and YouTube, it was wonderful, but the point of this video is not to reminisce poor Huck, who got kicked out on turn 1, but instead to reflect on Humankind's multiplayer. I'll be showing you highlights of the match, so if you missed the match, it went for about 3.5 hours. Here are the highlights, or at least little snippets taken from each point, so you can sort of follow along the journey and get a feel for how it went. But this video is actually about more than that. I will share with you my thoughts and feelings on how it went, but more importantly, I want to talk about, crucially, some key things. The multiplayer experience. How stable is it? The big thing, right? It was broken when Humankind launched. Multiplayer was broken. What does it look like now? That is the other question I'll be answering. And finally, as we move through toward the later parts of the video, I'll be talking about future needs for multiplayer and my future plans. What does multiplayer look like on this channel and within our community? Spoiler alert, I think it's going to be a good thing. But either way, sit back and relax and let's discuss Humankind's multiplayer. Firstly, I'm going to reflect on this game, so you actually know what you're watching. So, we set up a community multiplayer match. My mod, Huck, did a lot of the groundwork along with me. We set it up, and it was smooth as a button, despite a few interesting difficulties throughout. I won't bore you with the details, but in a nutshell, the TLDR is, it worked. Now, why did it work and what exactly were we playing? Because our match matters to how stable and enjoyable a multiplayer experience could be. So let me give you the full details so you know what to expect. We played this match with what was initially going to be 6 players, ended up being 5 through a fault of Huck's own, not the game itself. 5 players, blitz speed, starting with a sort of a 60 to 90 second turn timer and letting it progress. Gets a lot longer as the game goes on by default, and thank goodness for that. Otherwise, everything was standard except for 2 crucial house rules. The first rule was designed to make the game easier. We said if you choose a culture type, let's say a builder, an industrialist, you can't choose a builder again. So it forced us to play a little bit wide, try different strategies, and ultimately stop any single player snowballing by choosing the same culture again and again. I would recommend you have a setting like that in your games if you're wanting to play multiplayer yourself, that is. Secondly, and more importantly for the stability of the game, we decided that we wouldn't manually resolve any battles. We did watch them play out, we manually triggered them and then selected auto a lot of the time so that we could see what our troops were doing, but we decided just mainly to save time and a little bit of performance, we wouldn't manually control. There's our game in a nutshell. That's what we played. Now, let's talk about performance. This is the real elephant in the room as well. For those unfamiliar, Humankind launched with a pretty messy multiplayer experience. It'd be fair to say even a huge fan like me has to acknowledge the multiplayer was not stable, and actually there's still a lot of work to go. They are not finished with it. Every update, more is added to improve the stability or functionality of multiplayer, and of course we're constantly seeing new game features being added in as well that likewise have to fit a multiplayer environment. However, and really the crux here, and my key finding that really surprised me, was just how stable it was. Now, of course, as I say, and the reason why I talked a little bit at the start about the game is because it's important. We set up a game that was designed to be a more stable experience, right? Low number of turns, relatively quick turns, and fights auto-resolved in a world that was a standard size with a standard number of players. So we didn't go super easy, it wasn't a 1v1 on a tiny map. We stress tested it enough, but also kept it relatively light and breezy. And like I've said before, and I'll probably say it again, overall, it was a very smooth experience. My experience with this game of Humankind was incredibly enjoyable. I'll talk more about the actual gameplay itself and strategies and stuff later in this video, or maybe in a separate one, but actually from a core experience level, it worked very well. One of the things that plagued Humankind a lot when it first released from look at this, by the way. This was the moment of the match. When one of my opponents decided to fight me, it forced me to choose a new culture, even though those stars weren't very good, as you saw there. But crucially, I mean, man, what a fight. Look at this. The world is full of units. If a game can handle this fight, what can't it handle? And yes, we auto-resolved it, but we manually resolved it first. So the game does actually have to render every single unit, troop, movement, and fight. The only difference is we're not controlling it as humans. It speeds it up, but it doesn't actually make the game run any smoother, really. So, take a look at how it's handling it. Look at all these units. It is handling it very, very well indeed. But back to the point of the thesis, and actually overall I have to say it's a very enjoyable experience. Would I recommend you try it? Is it stable enough for the average person to try? I think the answer is yes. Is it perfect? No. It will desync. You can see down the bottom right, most of the game was spent desynced. Did it matter though? No. Unlike Civilization 5 or Civilization 6, for example, there are many other examples, but they are a good one, where a game desyncs and it just breaks and doesn't work and you spend hours trying to fix it. Humankind was the opposite. We didn't have to re-roll once, which surprised me a lot, but it was desynced the whole time. Again, did it matter? No. Would I recommend you try it? Actually, yes. It was an incredibly enjoyable and smooth experience. Server-side issues and performance aside, I'm glad I spent a few minutes covering it. Now let's talk about the actual experience itself. The game. How was it? Performance aside, does Humankind suit it, basically, is what I'm asking here. Can a single-player game be an enjoyable multiplayer experience? And again, not to harp back to Civ, but we see this time and time again with these kind of games. They're really enjoyable in single-player because that's what they're designed to be. And that's how the game is balanced and blah, 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 blah. You know, about 95% of players play single-player most of the time. It's very rare to play multiplayer. Is it enjoyable? Yes. Yes, it is. And did it work? Yes. The game itself, what did I think? Well, first and foremost, the first point I want to make, you don't have to have a lot of friends to play multiplayer. I know there'll be a couple of comments. People say, I don't have friends, I can't play it. I don't have friends either, but I was able to. And you might say, well, Jumbo, it's easy for you. You got a big community. And yes, I do. But here's the thing I would say to you. You're part of that community too. Over on my Discord, which is open to channel members, Twitch subscribers, and patrons, all the people who choose to support me, come into my Discord, we hang out together, and we organize multiplayer games through there. If you'd like to play with us in future, please do. Jump into the Discord, join us. It's a very low barrier to entry, but there is a slight barrier to entry just to make sure that the people there really want to be there. The idea is that it is the core of the community. We will be running more multiplayer games in future as well. I'll touch on that a little bit later in the video though, because I want to talk more, a little bit more about does Humankind suit this experience? Does it suit multiplayer? I think the answer is both yes and no. Yes, it suits it. Yes, it works. Yes, it's enjoyable. So much fun. But I think, and I haven't tried it without house rules, but I do think that if you're gonna play a multiplayer experience, you need to do two things. Firstly, obviously, you need to find some people online. You can join my community to do that. You can look on Twitter. You can join other Discords. There are many, many ways to find people on Steam as well. Lots of ways to find people to play with. And if all else fails, jump in our Discord and you can play with us. There are also multiplayer games that happen without me on the Discord when I'm not playing and watching. So plenty of opportunity there for you to get in and have an enjoyable experience. So we'll put that aside. Park that. Does the game work for multiplayer? On the negative side, I would say you probably want those house rules. Our one was that you can't choose the same culture twice. Like I said at the start of the video. You can't choose the same affinity twice, I should say. If you've played a militarist, you only get to play one. You have to choose a scientist or an agrarian, whoever you haven't chosen. I would recommend that just to keep the multiplayer balance stable. I have seen and watched some other multiplayer games, like the big content creator one that Potato McWhiskey and others played in a couple of weeks ago, that was organized by Amplitude themselves. Hey Amplitude, I'm free in my diary. But also, seriously, also I've watched some other multiplayer games as well that have been streamed online. The Yogscast, for example. And I think that even they reinforce my same message here. You need to have some sort of house rule just to make sure that players don't snowball. It doesn't have to be massive, but you do need to enforce it, particularly if one player is more skilled than the others. We went with that one. I think it was a good one to go for. Other options, you could say, actually, you can play the same cultural affinity twice, just not in a row. Other balancing, you could choose to do none and just try it. In fact, if you do that, Let me know. I would love to see it. By the way, what you're watching now is the very last turn of the game. And to pull you in, you can see it happening in chat. It's me and my ally Scott versus two enemies, Pumpkin and Little Kerr, who had fought each other at first, much to their dismay, but then allied and become a strong force. And we're trying here on the last turn to take the city. I went in first with my boats, and then Scott is going to come in, spoiler alert, next on land with these troops and see if he can crack the nut of Memphis on the very last turn. Very enjoyable. I thought I'd just give you a quick digression to note that. But to summarize this section of the video, is Humankind a good game for multiplayer? Yes, it suits it. You might want to put some house rules in along the way to fix some balance, but you don't even need to. If you're versing fairly similarly skilled players especially, I don't think you need to do that at all. Let's move through now into the last part of this video where I talk about future needs for multiplayer and the future of multiplayer on my channel. I'll start with the future of multiplayer on my channel because that's probably a frequently asked question. Indeed, it was many times on stream, on Twitch and YouTube, by the way, streaming on both. I think that multiplayer will have a huge role in our channel moving forward, in our community moving forward. I really enjoyed this game. I'm keen to play more. Everyone else who enjoyed it, who played, really enjoyed it too. Shout out to all of you supporters and players, but also viewers as well. I had great viewer feedback at the time and afterwards on just how much you guys enjoyed this game. Look at my beautiful empire, by the way. Isn't it fantastic? I didn't make it to the last era, but I don't mind. The British industrialists for my last turn was totally fine. You can see here I'm just ticking up a little bit, building a few things, getting ready for the last push. And I'll pan over and show you that last push momentarily. First though, let's talk about actually what we're going to do with multiplayer here. GG everyone and well played as we move through into last turn. Like I say, I'll pan over, but I just want to say yes, multiplayer will continue on this channel. Maybe it becomes a monthly thing. One Sunday stream a month, we play a game of multiplayer Humankind. It may also feature in my 10-hour live stream happening this Saturday your time. I was going to say Friday. Friday your time, Saturday mine. I get confused with time zones. Either way, yes, it will be a feature of the channel moving forward. I intend to run fairly similar rule sets. Maybe we raffle a few games, then we provide support to the people who support me and invite them to maybe lion's share of the games, and then decide what to do with the rest. Either way, here you can see the final standings. It was a very close fight between me and Huck, who was actually replaced by an AI to my left. The first human player to my right, Pumpkin, also put up a really wonderful fight. The pink player who I was fighting with earlier in the video. And now finally, what does Humankind's multiplayer need to be a really solid experience? And honestly, to reflect here at the end of the video, it was a little bit more work to do. It'll be a solid, polished experience, a very enjoyable one, and one that I really want to keep here on the channel. I wouldn't come out publicly in this video and say, we'll be doing more Humankind, unless I really seriously thought that one, this multiplayer game has a future, and two, I enjoyed it. And both of those things are very true. But of course, it's about the friends we made along the way.